What is going on, guys? It is Steven, your semi-comprehensive reviewer here, and in today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the Meta Quest 2 virtual reality headset. This guy is pretty much the #1 VR gaming headset available today, and even though this headset has been out for about 2 years now, I'm hoping to give you a perspective on how this headset has changed and whether or not it is still worth it to buy here in 2022, especially considering the company that released it is no longer a thing anymore. Facebook turned into Meta, and a big focus of Meta is this, VR and the virtual world. So in this video, I'll be going over the pros, cons, and features of the Quest 2 and whether you should book your ticket to the metaverse. So let's start with the first impressions of this guy. Right away, the big difference between the Quest and all other VR headsets is how easy it is to use and set up. After powering on the headset and connecting the controllers, all you need to do is go through the usual new device setup, sign into your Meta account, and adjust your headset to your liking. Now this is probably the point where most people will either be amazed by VR or they'll be sick. I personally had a little bit of dizziness, but after a few minutes of playing, it wore off. So this first stage here will really make or break the experience for most people. Now, whenever you put on your headset, you'll be greeted by this virtual space here, which you can customize to your liking. You can see here that I have my virtual hands here, and the controller layout and just how they feel in your hand do a great job of continuing the immersion of this virtual world. Now, the Meta Quest 2 comes preloaded with a few tutorial stages, and personally, I spent about an hour in these just having fun, throwing a bunch of objects around, punching a punching bag, shooting a gun, doing all that basic stuff. Just the initial amazement and awe of being in VR is something that is hard to describe and is truly an amazing experience in gaming. And if you haven't had that experience before, these tutorial stages will be a lot of fun for you. But the real fun to be had are the games you can actually play on the Meta Quest store. Now, the amount of fun you get out of this headset is directly dependent on what games you get. And since I had a boatload of fun playing on the Meta Quest 2, I highly recommend Superhot or Beat Saber. I spent about 90% of my time on the Meta Quest 2 playing those two games. Now, this isn't a game review video, so I'll keep it brief, but I think the best VR games fall into two categories. Things you've always wanted to do in VR, and things you never even thought of doing until you played it in VR. And these two games fall right into those two categories. Superhot is a game where you get to do something you do in a lot of other video games, which is use a gun to shoot people, but it's in VR, and it incorporates something you never even thought of doing until you played it in VR, which is shooting people in slow motion. So you can dodge bullets, throw knives, punch dudes, and I had already played Superhot on PC in its entirety before this game, and Superhot VR was still an amazing experience for me, and it's actually kind of a workout as well, at least if you play the game the way I do. Even though this game is in slow motion, you have to roll and dodge and crawl on the floor and really just look like an idiot, which is the magic of VR gaming. Then there's Beat Saber, just a classic VR experience. If there ever was one, you really can't go wrong with Beat Saber. This is truly something you never even thought of having fun doing until you played it in VR. The music is amazing and now makes up half of my playlist. And again, another workout here. A lot of the VR games are that way just because of how physical you are in the games. But you have fun doing it, which is awesome. Now let's play a game of pro and con. And since I just talked about how amazing the games are, a major pro of the Quest 2 is even though these games are generally more immersive than traditional console games, they also cost a lot less than traditional console games. Superhot was $24.99, Beat Saber was $29.99, and that's generally the price range for most of these VR games, usually between $20 and $40, and nowhere near the $69.99 price tag for AAA console titles. And even though the price of these games is cheaper, the quality you get out of them is still really high. Like I mentioned, Superhot and Beat Saber are both games that are half the price of most games, and yet you still get an amazing experience out of them. And while you're not getting any groundbreaking graphics, it's really mainly about the concept and the actual stuff you're doing in VR that makes them more entertaining. Now, moving on, a con of the Quest 2 is the battery life you actually have to play those cheaper games. I generally got about 2 to 3 hours playing games on the Oculus Quest 2, but it's not just the fact that it has a short battery life, it's the fact that it takes forever to charge, and it also drains like a sieve when you're not playing on it. Most devices, especially portable devices like a smartphone or even another gaming console like the Nintendo Switch, will hold their charge for at least a couple of days turned off, but the Quest 2 drained maybe a day after I stopped using it. It was almost like it was still on even though I made sure it was turned off. Of course, a phone will last you a couple days powered down, but even my Switch lasts about a week in sleep mode before shutting down completely. And this sucks because another pro of the Quest 2 is its great portability. You can easily just drop this guy in a bag, take over to a friend's house or on a trip somewhere, and you get this immersive experience with you at all times without the need to have little cameras in the corners or having a cable tethered to a high-end gaming PC. And the ability to take this virtual immersive world with you almost makes the experience more intimate because you can take this whole world with you wherever you go. That's of course if you remember to charge it up right before using it. Now the last con I want to mention is something that I experienced while using the Quest 2, and it's something I haven't really seen mentioned a lot online, and that is bugs and errors. And I realize that something like this depends on the person, how you use the Quest 2, and the individual headset itself, but only a few days after getting the Quest 2, I just couldn't connect to Meta's servers, even though everything on my network was fine. And I was able to fix that issue with a simple restart whenever I ran into it, but a few days after that, I was unable to turn my volume down, which for me, that combined with the network issues, which were a recurring thing, motivated me to return my original Quest 2 and get another one. So this Quest here is actually my second headset, and I haven't had too many problems with this second one. I did run into the network issue again, but that only happened once, and I haven't had it since. I did see other people complaining about the network problem, didn't find anyone else with the volume issue, but I'm pretty sure both of those were isolated bugs with that first headset, but I did think it was worth mentioning in this review. Now let's talk about some things that have changed over the course of the Meta Quest 2's life, because this console has been out for about 2 years now. So starting with something that will turn off a lot of people to this console right away, and that is the price. The cost of entering the metaverse has gone up from the initial price of $299 to now $399, $100 more. That's $100 more for really not much in the way of improvements. It's basically the same headset that came out 2 years ago, and yet the price has gone up. Usually over the course of a game console's life, you'll see a significant price decrease due to the fact that the age has increased and it's an older console now, but Meta went the complete opposite direction, and I guess they decided they needed more money. Now the Meta Quest 2 is still a lot less than the newly announced Meta Quest Pro, which goes for upwards of $1,500. Now granted, it is a lot better experience on the Meta Quest Pro than the Meta Quest 2. However, if you're looking for a cheap way to get into VR, the Meta Quest 2 is still the way to go. Another big change, this time for the better, is the dropping of the Facebook account requirement. A major turnoff for a lot of people when the Meta, at the time Oculus Quest 2 headset first released, was that you needed a Facebook account in order to even set the headset up. So that's now no longer the case, although you will need a Meta account instead. So if you weren't getting the Quest 2 because of ethical reasons and Facebook's shady business practices, well, Meta isn't Facebook, but it's really not much better and not much different. All in all, the Meta Quest 2 is really the best VR gaming headset out right now. From the ease of setup to the great game catalog, the Meta Quest 2 is really a vision into the future of VR. But like all visions and dreams, the Meta Quest 2 is just too good to be true. The battery life cuts the fun short. I personally ran into weird bugs, and with a new $100 price hike, it just makes the Meta Quest 2 a hard sell, even for avid gamers or those of us who want to get into the VR gaming world. I'm excited for what the future holds for Meta, and this guy will probably be seen as the first step into the new virtual world. But for now, I'll stick to the real world with all of life's great pleasures. A world where I can go on YouTube, search for my favorite YouTuber, like all of his videos, subscribe to see more of his amazing content, hit the bell icon to get notified of future uploads, and truly experience what the real world has to offer. Anyway, I got a little bit sidetracked there. Be sure to have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video.